League of Legends patch 12.21 was a pretty small one with not too many changes. So today's video is a quick tier list update following up and seeing how it's panning out a week later. Next week is the big pre-season update with Season 12 finally coming to a close, and that means that everything is going to be a bit chaotic. But if you're looking for the best champions and picks to grind out in this last week of solo queue, stay tuned and have a look at what you should be playing all around the Summoner's Rift to increase your chances of ranking up. Without further ado, let's jump into the tier list and start off with the top lane as always. In the gold tier we have Shen, Olaf and Singed. In the S tier we have Poppy, Sejuani, Mordekaiser, Darius, Nasus, Ornn, Wukong and Garen. A couple of shifts in the top lane this week as Lilia, Alawi and Maokai move back up into the A tier, and Aatrox also moves back up there to join them. K'Sante was released last week and this champion is a lot of fun. Now we haven't actually placed him in a tier just yet because we need to let him settle into the meta and people need to learn how to actually play him and build him, and then we can get a more accurate reading of just how good he is. He does seem a little bit undertuned at the moment as he was for a large part of his time on the PBE, but he's only a buff or so away from being more than viable. K'Sante is a tank who can actually deal a lot of damage and he has tons of mobility too. So Riot do have to be a bit careful with the balancing on this one. If they make him too strong, he's just going to walk around one-shotting everyone without taking any damage. We do feel like he does actually feel a bit stronger than he is currently on live back on the PBE because the new items are there already and they really do feel like they were made for him. So be prepared to see a lot more of K'Sante over the next week, especially as we head into the preseason. And don't underestimate him either. Just because his win rate isn't that great, he is a much better champion than you may think. Talking of great champions, Ornn is having a fantastic time up in the S tier at the moment and he's one of the most consistent and popular top laners in the game at the moment. Ornn had a minor bug fix last week but nothing else to speak of, so that means he's just still stomping a lot of games. Ornn has an incredible amount of crowd control. He has that engaging ultimate which can be used from so far away. And then he's also got those passive upgrades to his teammates' items, which is much better than people actually realise. Ornn is a dream lane to gank for as a jungler. He's the best setup CC ever, and he doesn't really have that many completely unplayable matchups, especially so for the majority of ranks. There's always a way that you can get through that lane phase and start pumping out that massive CC in teamfights. If you're looking for a consistent traditional tank in the top lane that's actually a lot of fun too, make sure you're playing Ornn. We also just wanted to throw a mention to Darius because this guy is just stomping still even after all these patches. Darius has just been so good since those teleport nerfs and since that durability patch all the way back in patch 12.10. The Flash Ghost nightmare to play against in the top lane is still winning the majority of games. And I'm sure you're all more than aware of this because he's either picked or banned in a lot of different lobbies. Darius has an incredible amount of snowball potential. He has really good burst damage, true damage, sustain. He's got kind of everything you need from a top lane bruiser at the moment in Season 12. And as we head into Season 13, guess what? Tanks are going to be back with a vengeance, and this just means Darius is instantly going to be better because he absolutely shreds them with his true damage. Whether you're playing him already or whether you want to learn him, now is a great time to pick up Darius. Moving into the jungle now, and in the god tier we still have Fiddlesticks and now we've got Rammus too. In the S tier we have Bel'Veth, Mordekaiser, Udyr, Amumu, Volibear, Zac and Master Yi. Yes, Amumu and Master Yi move back up into the S tier and Echo actually moves down from S to A. Wukong also jumps up a tier from B to A. So Xin Zhao got some love from Riot last patch and it was about time because this guy's been a bit non-existent for the majority of the season. He was a bit busted for a while and then he's just basically been absolutely nowhere for as long as I can remember. His passive third hit bonus damage AD ratio was increased, his healing AP ratio was increased too, and his E cooldown was decreased. And it's safe to say they've made a huge difference. Now Xin Zhao is still not going to be the best jungler in the game, but he's definitely a lot more viable since these changes, and he's actually gone up in his win rate by around 1.5% at the majority of ranks. This champion is your typical get stuck in and slap faces champion. He's pretty easy to pick up, simple to play, but he's really good when you get fed on him. He's nowhere near the likes of the S tier champions we've already spoken about, but there is definitely going to be more of a time and a place for this guy. So if you enjoy Xin Zhao, it's probably time to give him another go. Bel'Veth has been the queen of the jungle in the solo queue for the last few months, and she actually did get some nerfs this patch. Her E's cooldown got increased and her ultimate health has been decreased slightly. Well, we didn't think this was going to make too much of a difference and that's why we kept her in the S tier. And to be honest, she is still in the S tier. Her win rate has decreased by around 0.75%, but she's still just such a good jungler in solo queue. She has tons of mobility, she's a really good duelist, she scales incredibly well, and as long as she's got that E up, she can actually feel unkillable most of the time. Especially if you have no CC to interrupt this ability or no mobility to escape it. Bel'Veth just scales into the game infinitely. The permanent scaling stacking attack speed she gets from her passive is a bit mental, and this just means she gets into the late game and she just slaps you down no problem. Bel'Veth is just one of those champions that you never want to see get a few kills in the early game because you know she's going to spike earlier, scale faster, and she's just going to be a nightmare to play against. Well, you might win a few more games against her, but she's still in a really good spot, and she's going to keep her place in that S tier for the time being. Into that mid lane now, and in the S tier we have Swain, Vex, Diana, Zed, Echo, Syndra, and also Vladimir too, who moved up this week. Victor and Akshan moved down from S to A, Seraphine moves down from A to B now, and Kassadin moves up from B to A. Akali has also made a reappearance this week into that B tier. Corki has been a bit forgotten about for the majority of this season after his absolutely ridiculously dominant period he had a while back. He was permanently picked or banned everywhere and he was completely broken, but after a few too many nerfs he was actually one of the least picked champions this season. Well, Riot increased his health growth and his AD growth in the last patch, and they've made a surprising difference. Corki has seen his win rate increase by nearly 2%, which is absolutely mental for a champion who was really struggling in the depths of the 47s. These improvements and changes aren't enough to bring Corki quite into that B tier yet, but he's definitely on the right tracks now and we're not too far away from a bit of a grand return for him. Corki has fantastic scaling, insane burst damage with his rockets, and that passive special delivery is just so hard to beat. So if you do play against a Corki this patch, make sure you show it a little bit more respect than you have done in the past. Ahri also got some buffs in patch 12.21, her Q's mana cost was decreased and its AP ratio was increased. And to be honest, Ahri's just not been the same since those nerfs in patch 12.17. She was one of the best and most popular and most consistent mid laners in the game for the majority of the season, but those nerfs a while back did kinda leave her on the weak side. After last week's changes though, she's actually seen her win rate improve by around 1.5% at the majority of ranks, which is a significant improvement, and that's why she's actually gone up into the A tier now. Malzahar also got a minor buff in the last week's patch, and all they really did was make his E able to execute minions. Now this hasn't made Malzahar broken, it's far too small of a change, but the thing is it has actually seen an increase in his win rate by nearly 0.5%. Malzahar has definitely not had the best season of his life, loads of champions outrange him and loads of champions could just dive him and kill him. He's in this sweet middle ground. These buffs were definitely not enough to put him in those top tiers, but he's having a much better time over recent weeks. And if you do get the right draft for him, he's still a fantastic champion to play. He has fantastic wave control, he has really good push potential, and of course he's got one of the best abilities to set up ganks in the game with his ultimate. So this is just a reminder that if you do enjoy him, carry on. Down to those AD carries now, and in the S tier we have Seraphine, Kai'Sa, Twitch, Tristana, Samira and Jhin. Yes, Jhin moves back up there where he belongs and Misfortune moves down from S to A. No other changes or movements since our updates last week. Misfortune got some really weird changes last week. They buffed all of her AP ratios, but they nerfed her E slow by 10% down from 50 to 40. And for something which seemed like such a tiny nerf, it's actually brought her win rate down by nearly 1.5%. She's actually moved out of the S tier for the first time in ages. And it's safe to say that most bot laners and AD carry mains won't be too upset to see her fall down a bit. Misfortune has been in the S tier for such a long time that it's about time we saw a bit of a change up. Talking of champions that were in the S tier for ages, Jhin is now back again. This champion has been one of the most consistent AD carries in the game this season, and to be honest, for the majority of the time since his release. Jhin has such a unique playstyle for an AD carry, but it just seems to tick. It just seems to work in all sorts of metas, and right now he's in a really healthy spot again. On the flip side to Jhin though, we've got Lucian, who's actually one of the most inconsistent AD carries in the game, and the reason being is all about his support. Right now if you play Lucian Nami, it's an S+ tier lane. It's genuinely god tier, it's absolutely broken, even though Electrocute doesn't work anymore. However, if you play Lucian without Nami, he is in the B tier. He's just no way near the same champion without her. With Nami, he can one-shot people from as early as level 1 and 2, he can snowball at a ridiculous pace, his burst is absolutely mental. And to be honest, I don't need to say much more because I'm sure you've all played against the Lucian Nami this season. It is a bit busted. So when you're in Champion Select and you see the enemy team pick Lucian, take away the Nami and you'll have a much better time. And I'm also here to remind you guys that if you are playing ranked with your buddy in duo queue for the last week of this season, spam Lucian Nami. It's really good. Right, let's move on to those supports then, and in the god tier we still just have Janna. In the S tier we have quite a few though: Maokai, Taric, Amumu, Sona, Nami, Soraka and Blitzcrank. Yes, Soraka moves back up into the S tier and Zilean does move down from S to A. We also added Misfortune last week into the B tier, but we're going to knock her off again. She's just not that great. So again, not too many changes this week with the support role. The only actual champion changed was Blitzcrank, and to be honest it did make a bit of a difference. Nearly 1.25% was knocked off his win rate and now he's feeling a little bit less broken. Blitz's win rate over the last few weeks was around 53 to 54+%, and it's safe to say that he was completely overpowered for a while. Luckily though, this didn't really last too long, and Blitzcrank got a few nerfs in a row that have brought him back into a normal spot again. Well, I say normal, he's still in the S tier, he's still a really good pick, but it's not so much because of just he was absolutely broken, and instead now he's just a really good champion at the moment. We all know how scary a good Blitzcrank can be with those hooks. He can hook you from as early as level 1 in an invade, he can stomp you in the late phase if you have no flash or summoner spells available, and he can roam around the map like a headless chicken with that W and just hook people to his heart's content. And if he lands those hooks, he's just going to snowball every lane all at the same time. If you enjoy roaming around and playing like an absolute madman, then you should definitely be spamming Blitzcrank still. Even after all of these nerfs, he's still a fantastic champion to carry with, especially in solo queue for the last chance you've got of getting those ranked rewards. Finally, we just had to talk about Soraka again as we moved her up to the S tier again this week. Soraka is just so easy to be effective on as long as you don't int in the early game. You have really good laning with your poke and zoning with your Q and E, but it's really that healing which makes the difference. You can genuinely save teammates and turn fights from across the map with your ultimate. And of course, you're also just really good in 2v2s because of that ultimate and because of the sheer amount of healing you can pump out too. Soraka works so well in so many different ways in the lane phase too though. If you're playing with a really vulnerable passive AD carry that just wants to scale, you can keep them healthy. I mean, what's not to like about that? But also, if you're playing with a really aggressive AD carry that wants to fight, that wants to get fed and wants to snowball, you can just keep them topped up too. Your Draven goes in 1v2 and takes one down, you heal him back up to full and he doesn't even need to reset. It's as simple as that. Soraka's utility and healing throughout games is unrivaled at the moment and there's only a few that come close, like maybe even Sona. And if you really do enjoy that classic support playstyle of running around the map, being the medic, being the healer, then Soraka is the one for you. Well, that's going to bring us to the end of our quick patch 12.21 tier list update video for you. We hope you enjoyed it and don't forget to click the link in the description to see all of the tier lists for yourself, plus guides and videos for every single champion. Thanks everyone for watching this video and we'll see you all in the next one. Take care.